Doug, sometimes I have a story that I've realized over time would be a good story, and then other times I have a point that I need to make. But when you're putting all this together, which comes first, the story or the point that you're going to make with it?
Thank you for that question. That's a great question, and it's a challenge that many people have. Here's my answer. It depends. It's really situational. Sometimes something is going to happen to you in your life, and within a day or two afterward, you're going to be thinking, this is a good story. You immediately have to ask yourself, what's the point? Is there a lesson here that I can use within the context of my topic? What I want to talk about, what I need to say in the next meeting that I'm going to be leading. So sometimes the story comes first, but we immediately go to what's the point. More often than not, in my world, I am looking for a story to fit a point. If I'm developing a leadership program, I'm going to sit down and strategically choose, I want to talk about this, 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 and this. And I'll choose my 5 main points. I'll immediately go to phrase that pays. And then I'll start looking for what is the story that will teach this? What is the story that will teach this? Do I have that story from my life? Now, if I don't have the story from my life, I go out into the world and I start doing some research. But 80% of the stories that I tell, if not 90% of the stories that I tell, are personal stories from my life experience. Regardless of whether the story comes first or the point comes first, there has to be a point. Otherwise, what's the point? So it really depends. As an example, when I had the airport story happen to me and I missed the shuttle bus and I was really frustrated and I got a ride in a limo, because I live in story, the metaphor of what just took place was immediately evident to me. Literally on the plane the next day I'm thinking, now that's really interesting. I was really frustrated about missing a shuttle bus, and here I am getting a ride in a limo. That's a metaphor for something. And when I came up with the look for the limo, it's like, oh, the story came first. The point evolved later. When I went streaking in Hollywood, I can tell you for a fact, the next day, while I was hanging drywall, I was thinking, I finally have some stand-up comedy material. Now, unfortunately, I did not know how to tell it. And this is the truth of the story theater method and the evolution of it. After the streaking story, I finally took everybody's advice and I went to the comedy club up on Sunset Strip. And I did open mic night and I told the streaking story. I stood still at a microphone on a stand, microphone right here. I stood still at it and I told the story. And I did not move. And it took about 4 minutes and I told the story. And nobody laughed. And I thought, I need a better audience. Are you with me on this? So, I went to the Improv on Melrose, the famous Improv Comedy Club. Open mic night. Now, you might not know this about open mic night, but you don't get to choose your time slot. You know what time slot I got? 1:50 a.m. 10 minutes before closing, 2 drunks sitting way off in the dark. I did my streaking story. Of course, no laughter because they weren't paying any attention to me. There were drunks in the back of the room. Everybody else had left. It was like, okay, I'm speaking to a dark room. I need a better audience for sure now. I went to another comedy club, same result. I went to another comedy club, same result. I did 5 comedy clubs, standing still at a microphone, telling the story, and I never got a laugh. And I concluded from that experience, I'm not funny. I'm just not funny. The story's funny, but I'm not. If I'm in Shakespeare and you give me a role, I can be funny, but if it's just Doug, I don't know how to be funny. So what happened is, 10 years later, I've left Hollywood. I'm not an actor anymore. I'm giving a speech on presentation skills at the Pikes Peak Library in Colorado Springs. And out of my mouth pops the words, you want to hear a funny story? It was a hot, sticky Wednesday night. And all of a sudden, I'm doing this story, and I'm running around, and I'm like doing all this activity. And while I'm doing the story, people are laughing so hard they're crying. Tears are coming down people's faces. They are loud. And here I am doing this, and at the same time I'm going, this is pretty cool. I don't know what the heck this is, but this is pretty cool. That night on the way home, I realized, oh, in Hollywood, I told the story. At the Pikes Peak Library District, I went streaking. And that was the beginning of story theater. I didn't know it, but I realized this is the genesis. You don't talk about going streaking, you streak. You don't talk about riding a bike, you ride a bike. You don't talk about getting your luggage at the luggage carousel, you get your luggage at the luggage carousel. And story theater was born. Now, the streaking story happened, and I had to figure out what's the point. The point has changed over the years. The airport story happened, and I had to figure out what's the point. The point evolved over the years. I have done each of those stories at least 600 times, but they are now set. In most cases for you, I want you to consider this. Think about your speech, think about your presentation, and decide what are the learning points that I need to teach. The challenge with far too many of my students is they start out and they go, I got this great story. And I go, okay, good. What are you going to use it for? Well, but it's funny. What are you going to use it for? We're talking storytelling in business. We're talking corporate America. We're talking associations that are paying big money for this kind of stuff. They want results. They don't really want stories. They want results. What are you going to use it for? What's the utility? Story is a tool. So which comes first, the story or the point? It depends. However, you better know that this story is a strategic tool that I can use to do this one thing brilliantly. Nobody else can do your story. They can try, but they cannot do your story. Differentiation in the marketplace, uniqueness of content, that's what it's all about. Content is not king. Uniqueness of content is king. Originality of content is king. You can be amazing if you have your own stories.